Okay, so I'm going to jump right in. Today, I'm going to be talking about why infection control is important within the dental clinic. So every day, we need to keep in mind that we can be routinely exposed to direct, indirect, and airborne transmissions that can include aerosol sprays and spatters. So maintaining safe protocols is very important. But to help do this, we have specific protocols that are regulated from agencies such as EPA and OSHA. And then we can follow further recommendations from non-regulated organizations like the CDC and OSAP. It's very important to know the difference between the two because as the CDC makes recommendations, it doesn't mean you can't follow it because your state statutes may be enforcing the CDC recommendations. So that's very important to know. Also, microorganisms can leave and enter the environment in a variety of ways. Like I mentioned, direct contact, indirect contact. So it's important to be conscious that the opportunity can arise at any time. And just because you can't see it, it doesn't mean it's not happening, especially within a patient. It's good to treat each patient like they could have a harmful disease, even if you know they don't. And proper infection control measures, it ties in with keeping you and your team members safe, also your patients, but your job is to get the patient back to maximum health. And if you're not following recommendations, you're not going to help them get better. And ethically, it's not correct. And while we're not following these infection control guidelines, we can get a breach. We could get investigated, and that can lead to lawsuits and fines. And lawsuits can lead to loss of money. And if you don't have the money to operate, your doors will be closed and you're not going to be creating revenue. So performing correctly is just the right thing to do, and ethically it's correct. So let's get into some more topics. So something I kind of created for this class is just kind of a different way to look at how you perform things, and I call it the golden rule. The golden rule is going to be you following a routine no matter what you're doing. The way you break down a room, you're going to do it the same way you did yesterday. Or the way you put your PPE on, you're going to do it the same way every time. And if you're doing this correctly, you're following the golden rule, you're not going to skip a step in your procedure. And if you're not skipping a step, you're not going to have an infection control breach. You're not going to forget that you didn't clean something, and you're not going to forget that you didn't put your glasses on. So following the golden rule, you're not going to have the potential of an infectious agent in the environment. So it's just kind of a fun way to look at it. So let's talk about our PPE, as this is one of the most important things that we have because our bodies are exposed. So we want to protect our bodies. A main point is PPE always goes on in reverse order from what you change most frequently throughout the day. So therefore your gloves are going on last because you change them the most, right? Let's talk about our gloves. You always change your gloves before and after a patient, and you're also going to be performing your hand hygiene. Gloves are always dirty, so don't touch anything you don't want to cross-contaminate. They're single use, and also if you want more information, CDC always has a detailed list, and they also provide proper hand hygiene as well. Eye protection is going to help you with spatter, splashing, flying tooth fragments. And your masks, you need to be wearing the correct mask for the task you're performing in. So following protocols for your mask is very important. So there's some basics on PPE, but to make infection control even easier, we're going to talk about some important points of sterilization protocols with cleaning. So how to clean? There's actually many steps to cleaning. I never knew this, so this is something new to me. You do not wipe down a room once and call it good. First, we're going to do a first wipe. The first wipe is going to help remove any bioburden left from the procedure, and this is going to lower the level of microorganisms. So keep in mind the surface is not cleaned and it's not disinfected. So if you clean your surface first, then we'll come in second And the second wipe down will be your disinfection step. So the second wipe, but don't confuse the second wipe with sterilization. It's disinfected, not sterilized. And while we're cleaning, we also handle different levels of disinfectants, different types of cleaners. So we need to know the levels that we may be handling. And actually the different levels we'll be using is determined by the classification of our instrument. So if we're using a critical instrument, it's cutting bone, we're going to need to use a high level disinfectant. And if we're using semi-critical, these instruments are touching mucous membranes, we can use a lower level. And non-critical pose the least risk of transmission, like the PID on your x-ray machine. So it's important to know what kind of tool you're using, how do you need to sterilize it, how long, and what type. So there's high level, intermediate, and low level. The most important thing to know is intermediate level is your tuberculocidal activity. This is your benchmark. And this can be used on non-critical items. And your high level is usually used relatively short for contact time, and it can be used as a sterilant if used with a prolonged period of time. Also, high-level disinfectants can be used for semi-critical items that cannot withstand heat. So with disinfecting and room cleaning, we also need to take care of our tools. In doing this, we actually have sterilizers, and there's a variety of sterilizers. So we'll just go over the basic outline. There is steam sterilizers, and these bad boys need to reach 250 degrees Fahrenheit for a time of 30 minutes. And any time under 30, we'll be slowly racking up that degree up higher. Dry heat sterilizers reach a much higher temperature, up to 375 degrees. Not always that high, but up to 375. And many failures can arise here, just like cleaning your room. You need to make sure you're monitoring your sterilizer correctly. But to help maintain lack of failure, we're actually going to maintain adequate instrument cleaning. We're going to be packaging our tools correctly. We're not going to be overloading the sterilizer, and we're going to be watching the amount of time they're in there and actually watching the temperature, so watching our gauges and whatnot. We also have chemical monitoring. This can help us show whether our instruments have met that temperature or not. Our process indicators are placed on the outside of our instruments. This can be your indicator strip tape, and when it changes the color, that will show whether or not it's reached that temperature we need or not. And then process integrators are placed inside packs, and they respond to temperature, time, and pressure. Also, we call those multi-parameter indicators. And last but not least, we have biologic monitoring, and this is a test that's embedded on a strip. We place this in the sterilizer, and it has a spore embedded on it, and it's either going to tell us if it has reached sterilization, as spores are the highest resistant life forms. So now that we have a little bit of sterilizers, something else I think is really cool, which I think is a infection control worker's best friend, because it helps us maintain these areas, these hard to reach cracks and crevices like your keyboard. We can't clean that all the time. It's too time consuming, it's expensive. So if we place a barrier on top of it, our problem is resolved. So that's why I would call it our best friend. Also, think of our digital sensor in radiography. If you place that barrier on top of it, it'll help reduce the microorganisms on it, because that receptor is going to be going in a lot of people's mouths in one day, and that technology cannot withstand high heat, so a barrier will be saving the life of that receptor. But we also do need to be aware of our barriers. Just because it's covering it doesn't mean it's not affected or compensated. So watch your dentist's hands. If say they do pick up the mouse and they touch under that mouse where the sticker isn't, you do need to clean that. So areas can be compensated. So that's important to know. But those are just a few of my favorite topics